All right, let's jump right in. Welcome to this explainer. Today we're going to explore something truly fascinating called the First Great Lesson. It's a famous educational framework that masterfully weaves together spiritual wonder and foundational science to explain the absolute beginnings of our universe. Let's get started. So, picture this: long, long before the Earth, the Sun, or even humans existed, there was just a great void. The story we're looking at begins with a creator, a God who is perfectly complete. But, human beings have always struggled with this abstract concept. For centuries, people asked their wisest sages, does this creator have a body, hands to work with, feet to walk with? And the answer was always a resounding no, which naturally leads to a massive question. Honestly, it is incredibly difficult for the human mind to grasp the idea of an invisible, formless creator. Right? Early humans were pretty frustrated by this. They thought, well, if we have hands and we can't build mountains or command the seas, how on earth could a being with no hands, who can't even be seen or touched, create everything from the sparkling stars to the scent of a flower? I mean, it sounds impossible, almost like a fairy tale.
Well, the answer requires us to shift our perspective completely. Think about it. Every single thing in the universe perfectly follows the laws of physics. The story frames these physical laws as the direct will of the creator. So every time a cool breeze brushes against your cheek, or the sun rises over the ocean, or a piece of fruit drops from a tree to the ground, they are all essentially whispering with one voice, I hear and I obey. Even inanimate things like rocks and winds, simply by existing and doing exactly what they were designed to do, are obeying. But before all this grand obedience could even begin, there was only the deep. Try to actually imagine an immensity of space with absolutely no beginning and no end. It's indescribably dark and cold. Now, when we think of darkness, we usually think of nighttime, but our earthly night would literally be like brilliant sunshine compared to this initial pure darkness. And when we think of cold, we think of ice. But ice is positively hot, like as hot as a blazing furnace, if you compare it to the absolute freezing void of this early space. When, out of nowhere in this measureless void, boom, light is created. A vast, fiery cloud suddenly appears. And what's absolutely wild to wrap your head around here is that the entire universe, the whole of everything that ever was and ever will be, was contained right inside this cloud. But there weren't any solid stars or planets yet. The heat was so flamingly intense that all the substances we know today, iron, gold, rocks, water, earth, existed purely as gases. They were completely insubstantial, fused together in a raging fire cloud of nothingness, just spinning through the freezing ocean of space. Now, as this massive fiery mass moved through space, little drops fell from it, constantly moving in such a way that they would never, ever meet. These little drops became the stars. The sheer cosmic scale we're talking about here is just mind-boggling. These stars are millions of miles apart from one another, and it takes their light millions of years just to reach us. And keep in mind, light doesn't travel at some slow pace like 1,000 miles an hour. It travels at an astonishing 186,000 miles per second. To put that into perspective, in the exact time it takes you to snap your fingers, light can travel all the way around our entire Earth 7 times. We walk around thinking our Earth is absolutely huge. But if you hopped in a car and drove at 100 miles an hour without ever tapping the brakes, day and night, it would take you 106 years just to reach the sun. Our Earth is literally an invisible speck of nothingness compared to the sun, which is 1,000,000 times bigger. Get this. Just one single flame flaring off the surface of the sun could fit 22 of our Earths inside it. No way, right? But it's true. Okay, so back to our fiery universe. As this blazing mass began to cool down, concrete physical laws stepped in. Every single scrap of the universe, down to the absolute tiniest speck of vapor, was given a specific set of rules to follow. As particles cooled, they moved closer together, taking up less space. And it's kind of like humans. Just like we naturally gravitate toward certain people and want nothing to do with others, these tiny particles were given special attractions for certain particles and a distinct dislike for others. And based purely on their temperature, how hot or cold they are, these particles obey some really strict rules. We know these today as the states of matter. Solids cling together so tightly that they hold their shape, unless you force them not to. Like if you chip a rock, those little chips are still solid rock. Liquids hold together too, but not quite as closely. They don't have a defined shape, they just roll over each other, and they only push downwards and sideways. That's why you can effortlessly slide your hand through a pool of water, but definitely not through a boulder. And gases? They were essentially told not to cling at all, just moving freely in every single direction.
Now, because these particles were all completely different, they didn't just magically become solids, liquids, or gases all at the exact same time. While perfectly obeying these structural laws, the little drop of nothingness that would eventually become our Earth just kept spinning around itself and revolving around our sun. Over hundreds of thousands of years, the outer particles of our Earth began with the story beautifully calls a magnificent dance of the elements. So picture the particles on the outermost edge hitting that freezing cold vacuum of space. They shrink down, get heavy, and hurry right back toward the center of the Earth. But as they get closer to the center, they heat up again. They expand, become lighter, and soar right back upward, kind of like a bubble of air rising in a glass of water. Once they hit the edge again, they cool, shrink, and fall back down like a grain of sand sinking to the bottom of a pond. Up and down, over and over and over again. After literally millions of years of this, our tired little dancers began to finally settle down. The heavier particles sank way down toward the heart of the Earth, and the lighter ones just floated on top, sort of like oil on water. As the outside of the Earth finally cooled off, it formed a thin skin. Think of that thin layer of scum that forms on top of boiled milk when you leave it out to cool, or the skin on top of a fresh bowl of hot pudding. That little skin, that is our Earth's crust. But wait, there's a catch. The elements trapped underneath that pudding-like skin, they were still incredibly hot. And the fundamental, unbreakable law of hot particles is that they absolutely must expand. But because of this newly formed crust, they had nowhere to go. They felt trapped. And since they had to obey their physical law, they burst out, breaking right through the skin in a terrible, violent fight. Massive volcanoes erupted everywhere. The water on the surface instantly flashed into vapor, and these thick clouds of smoke and ash were drawn around the Earth like a massive veil, hiding it completely. It was almost as if the sun itself was ashamed to look at the chaos. Eventually, though, all that intense fighting ceased. The Earth kept cooling, and as it cooled, it started to shrink. Think of a forgotten old apple that you leave in the back of a cupboard for a few weeks. It gets all shriveled up and wrinkled, right? Well, that is exactly what happened to our Earth. As it shrank, it wrinkled, and those massive wrinkles pushing upward, those became our mountains, and the deep hollows between them, those became the giant basins for our oceans and seas. So you can really see how order was finally starting to emerge from all that chaos. We go from that initial cooling skin to the violent volcanic eruptions that threw the whole Earth into darkness. But eventually the atmosphere cooled. The massive ash clouds condensed, and it began to rain. And I mean it rained and rained and rained for seemingly endless stretches of time. That liquid water obeyed its own law to flow downwards, completely filling up the hollows of our wrinkled apple to form our oceans. Finally, that thick veil of clouds withdrew, the air cleared up, and the sun could smile upon the Earth once again. Ultimately, when you break it all down, everything around us, from the rocks beneath our feet, to the trees, to the water, the air, and yes, even us human beings, we are literally all made of the exact same star stuff from that very first great fiery cloud. We were all one at the absolute dawn of the universe. And by simply existing, we are participating in this grand, structured dance, carrying on that ancient cosmic motif of we obey. So, I want to leave you with this. Knowing that literally every single atom in your body was forged in the intense heat of that original, measureless void, and knowing that you are bound by the exact same physical laws that shaped the mountains and filled the oceans, how do you view your own connection to the universe's laws? It really is a wonderful, beautiful framework for understanding our origins. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and hey, keep looking up at the stars.